Hey guys, BreadGod Gaming here, hope you're having a good day. Ever wonder why your realm keeps breaking apart when your character dies and you can never seem to make a large kingdom? I'm going to explain how succession works and give you some tips on how to prevent or reduce the pain. Succession occurs when our ruler dies, and succession law determines how our personally held titles will be passed on to our children. Inside the Realm tab, there is a succession page. At the top, we can see and change our succession law. There are 6 conventional succession laws split into 3 multiple heir succession and 3 single heir succession laws. There are also some special succession laws and differences with clan succession, which will be reviewed later. By default, we start with the weakest succession law, which is Confederate Partition. Stronger succession laws are unlocked as the cultural innovations are researched as the game goes on. Most early game struggles are due to Confederate Partition, and I'll talk about it in depth in a second. Over here are the gender laws, which can be changed in view here. There are 5 options. Only means that only that gender can inherit, whereas preference means that the preferred gender will inherit first before the opposite gender, and equal being equal inheritance. The character's religion will determine what type of gender laws are selectable, and most religions start with male-dominated stance, and their succession gender law is usually male preference. You can also view succession at a glance from the character page, which will show our primary heir, the character we will be playing after our current ruler dies. We can see all the titles we personally own down here, and they're sorted by rank. These are the titles that will be split among our eligible heirs. We can also click on each individual title and we'll see an extended line of succession and also the realm succession law. In Confederate Partition, titles are equally given out to children, and new titles can be created upon death if equal in rank and when possible. Tribal governments can only have Confederate Partition. For example, we are the Petty King of Munster. I have 2 sons, and our highest ranking and primary title is the Duchy of Munster. Thomond, Ennis, Desmond, and Ormond. When distributing titles, we start with the highest ranking first. We only have 1 duchy title, so my eldest son will inherit that title. Then the 4 county titles will be split evenly for 2 counties per son. My older son will get Thomond and Desmond, and my younger son the other 2 titles. The order of inheritance is based on the order in the domain page. So Thomond will go to my oldest son, Ennis will go to my younger son, then Desmond will go to my older son, then Ormond will go to my younger son. Because my younger son did not inherit a duchy title, my older son will be a higher rank than him and will vassalize his younger brother. So if we died like this, my older son has the duchy title here and the 2 counties, and the younger brother is located here as our vassal, controlling these 2 counties. This way, the realm is not split. However, if we did not have a duchy title and only held 4 counties, then both sons will be equal in rank, and the realm will split into 2. As we can see here, our older son has 2 of the pieces, and our younger brother has 2 of the other pieces. In CK3, more lands means more power. You also want the same pieces of land, and each county will have buildings. These buildings will be built throughout your generations, making each piece stronger and stronger over time. So you want to pass all these highly developed lands to your primary heir so you can keep all the power for yourself. We'll get to some methods later. Once our realm is bigger than a few counties, now comes the other problem with Confederate Partition. The second part says new titles can be created when possible. Before I continue, let me review the concept of de jure. De jure means by law and what should rightfully be. If we sort by the duchy titles at the bottom right here, and we click on this duchy title of Munster, at the top here you'll see it says de jure counties in the Petty Kingdom of Munster, meaning by law, everyone accepts that the earldoms of Desmond, Ennis, Ormond, and Thomond are part of the Duchy of Munster. And over here you'll see Leinster only has 2 de jure counties, and this type of grouping can also be seen for the kingdom level titles, showing which duchy titles constitute them, and so on. So if I'm the Duke of Munster and I hold these 6 counties, even if I don't have that second Duchy of Leinster title here, you'll see that my second son actually will inherit the Duchy of Leinster title, as it will automatically be created by Confederate Partition. This again will cause the realm to split, with my older son owning the Duchy of Munster and his younger brother owning the Duchy of Leinster. One other thing you might have noticed is that this son only inherited 2 counties and the other son inherited 4 counties. And that's because part of the law that is not written in this tooltip says, and any direct de jure titles associated. Since inheritance starts with the higher rank, our sons will split the Duchy of Munster and the Duchy of Leinster, and each son will get its de jure counties. So 4 for Munster and 2 for Leinster. This even applies to when I have 2 kingdoms. You'll see that my older son will inherit all these titles that are de jure part of Ireland, while my younger son will inherit the Kingdom of Scotland title that I haven't created and the single county title that I hold. So when we again die, we will control Ireland and our brother will control the Kingdom of Alba. So having this knowledge, one tip I have is, let's say we own these 6 counties here again, except this time we own the Duchy of Leinster. Our primary son will inherit that Duchy of Leinster title, but only its 2 de jure counties, and our younger brother will inherit the Duchy of Munster title and the 4 counties there. What we can do is we can preemptively create the Duchy of Munster titles, and for the highest ranking title you own, which is a duchy in this case, we have the option to change which one is our primary title. So by making Munster our primary title, we will now inherit its 4 de jure counties versus our younger son will inherit the Duchy of Leinster and its de jure counties. An extra bonus here is that you actually see he only gets 1 county title, and that's because our realm's capital is actually here in Leinster, and the realm capital is always inherited by your primary heir. This is one trick where you can inherit a little bit more land. So reverting back to the other example where my primary title is the Duchy of Munster, I can purposely go into this title here, and once per lifetime I can move my realm capital. You'll see that my younger son was going to get the Duchy of Leinster and its 2 de jure counties. But once I make this county my capital, you'll see the inheritance has taken that out, and now my older son is going to inherit that. So Confederate partition is painful because your realm keeps splitting, but also if you have a ton of kids, then everyone's going to take a slice of the pie, and your primary heir is going to be left with almost nothing. If we look here, you'll see that the holdings will give plenty of troops and gold, and my current power of 1200 is because I have many titles. But once we die and we're left with only 2 pieces, our power will drastically reduce. So now I'm going to show you some methods on how to prevent or reduce the effects of this splitting. My first and best method is to enable a special elective succession law. However, these laws are only available to feudal governments or specific cultures. So feudal elective law is available if you have a feudal government. Scandinavian elective is available if your culture has the Tingmeat tradition, like Norse, Norwegian, Swedish, and Danish cultures. Tanistry elective is available if your culture has the Goidelic or Brythonic heritage, like Irish is Goidelic, Gaelic is Goidelic, Welsh is Brythonic. For tribal governments to have elective succession law, you need to have the Legacy of Persia DLC, and only cultures like Afghan, Balak, and Brahui start with Jurga. You cannot reform your culture to have the Jurga tradition, so you can only either start out with it or hybridize with it. So elective succession is kind of limited for tribal governments. This is one good reason why you should change into a feudal government. To actually access that special election page, we just click on that duchy title and there will be this add laws button here. And since we are Irish, we are Goidelic heritage, and we can go for the Tanistry elective succession law as long as we have 1500 prestige. We can get prestige through feasts, hunts, and if you have tours and tournaments, you can do grand tournaments and grand tours, or in battles where we help our ally. If it's a battle for your own war, you will only get fame, but if it's to help out an ally, you will get prestige if you fought the enemy alone. Once you get enough prestige, you can click add law, and now you'll see the succession law has been applied here. This elective law will stay here as long as this title exists, even if it's being passed along or conquered by other people. It can only be destroyed if the title itself is destroyed, or if someone uses some prestige to remove the law. There will now be an envelope where you can click to view the election. Now you can vote for an eligible heir. In Tanistry, the members are anyone in your dynasty, and vassals would tend to vote for older distant relatives. However, if we check the electors, I am the only voter, and that's because I hold all 4 de jure counties. So make sure you hold everything in order to have this managed democracy. If you check the succession page, you'll see that the duchy title here is in its own section. And when we vote for our son, you'll see that he's going to inherit more titles than before. And that's because this title is counted in its own succession. So since we're the only voter, our son will inherit the Petty Kingdom of Munster, and also all 4 titles within its de jure over here. And now the succession game only sees that I have the Duchy of Leinster and its 2 de jure counties, Ossory and Leinster. And so my 2 sons are only going to split these 3 titles. That's why my primary son will get this Duchy of Leinster and one of its pieces, and the younger son will have only 1 piece. If we create this title and get some more prestige, we can also add Elective Succession onto this title. So if I again choose Tanistry Elective and add the law, now this title will also have elective law on it. I can now go into the election and I can again vote for my primary heir. Now you'll see that everything is going to go to my oldest son. He's going to win both elections where I am the only voter, and now the realm is going to be fully intact. This is the best method in the early game to maintain a strong power base, and the only problem now is to have enough domain limit to hold all the titles without a penalty. I usually tend to instruct my children with stewardship lifestyles to get them as much stewardship as possible. If you're lacking stewardship, you can go for the domain focus, and you can eventually get down to divided attention, which gives you +2 domain limit. For every 6 stewardship, you get +1 to your limit, and you also get additional limit as your rank increases. One key thing to note is that this election strategy only works with 2 or more duchies, but you can have as many duchies as you want. If we only have this one duchy and we vote for our son, you'll see that succession does not change at all. However, if I have 3 titles and they all have elective and I elect my son for all of them, then he will inherit everything. You can go as high as you want, /afford to. When you become a king or emperor, the game will notify you that you have too many duchies, and for every duchy over 2, your vassals will have -15 opinion. So at 3 duchies, you're 1 over the limit, and they'll have -15. At 4 duchies, you'll have -30 opinion because you're 2 over the limit. Election law can also be added to kingdom titles. Instead of adding it for 1500 prestige through the Add Laws button on the title, we can actually come to the decisions, and you will get a Adopt Special Succession type, and it will only cost 300. When you click on it, you'll see an option to have the elective law added to your kingdom title. The downside of a kingdom or empire elective succession is that we will now have other persons who can vote for candidates that are not our primary heir. Thankfully, you get extra voting strength for being the house head and the dynasty head, and if we vote for our son, in an event of a tie, our nominee has preference. If you really need to, you can try to force a vote, and you can get a hook to force the vote. One way to get hooks is by going for the Truth is Relative perk. This will give you a fabricate hook scheme that when successful will give you a hook. You can also click on the target and use your spy master to find secrets, and over time you might find a secret to blackmail the person with. All in all, you can see why election is very powerful, and if you're a tribal government without access to tribal elective, then this is a good reason to become feudal. So now let's talk about some other solutions to realm splitting and power splitting. So I'm starting back here with just the Duchy of Munster and the 4 counties here. Going back to the idea that I want to have these 4 counties as my core holdings that I want to keep passing on to my heirs. Before we talk about any methods, in general, we want to leave our unwanted sons unmarried so they don't have any kids, because some of the methods use death as a way to control inheritance. If our son dies but he had a son, then his inheritance will pass on to your grandson. So this is why you should leave your unwanted sons unmarried. In some religions, like Islamic or Eastern religions, there are no bastards, meaning that if your unwanted sons sow their seeds with a lover, you might have to deal with your grandchild as well. The first method is to selectively conquer counties. We know that every extra son will want their fair share of inheritance. Since we have 1 extra son right now, in order to pass down these 4 pieces of Munster, we're going to have to give our second son 4 counties for himself as well. So what I mean by selectively is if we go to the duchy title filter, remember how this Duchy of Leinster has these 2 de jure counties. As long as we don't conquer both of them, Confederate Partition will not automatically make this title. So we only need to conquer under the requirement here. in this case 1 county. Since I need 4 pieces, I will likely have to conquer 1 from each of these 4 duchies. So if I conquer these 4 counties over here, I now have enough to give to my second son. If I double check the succession, you'll see each son will get 4 pieces. However, my older son will get Thomond, Desmond, Ossory, and Bryphony. In order to make sure he inherits these 4 pieces over here, I can select my son and preemptively grant him the 4 newly conquered territories, and he will become my vassal, and he will now have his fair share of inheritance, and my older son will inherit the 4 counties we want him to inherit. You can also extend this method to kingdom titles. Just conquer right below the required amount, and Confederate Partition will not automatically create this title upon your death. Going back to before I granted the titles, you might wonder, why couldn't I just have granted the titles to my older son? You'll see that the titles are grayed out because the Confederate Partition law prevents us from preemptively giving these titles to our son. Another method is to simply get the extra duchy and let the realm split. So in this case, we have all these 6 counties. When we die, you'll see that we actually have a claim on the petty kingdom of Leinster. And so as long as we inherit the larger or more developed portion, we can always go to war for our claims, and we can easily defeat our sibling to get the land back. The next few strategies involve interacting with your sons or daughters. The most straightforward method is to right-click an extra son and end the hostile actions to disinherit them at the cost of some prestige and some renown. This might be hard to achieve since renown is hard to get, and it's often better spent on dynasty legacies over here. The main advantage of disinheriting is if you don't like your primary heir, you can actually disinherit him and play your secondary heir if he is a better character. Another method is from the monasticism tenet of certain religions like Catholicism. This lets you ask courtiers to take the vow and become a monk, which makes them unable to inherit titles. If we right click our son, you'll see that it says ask to take vows here. If we hover over here, we can see the acceptance rate. The acceptance rate is increased if they are further down the line of inheritance. This son is second in line, so he has a minus 75 penalty. He likes us, so plus 16. Monastic communities is part of Irish culture. If we check the acceptance rate of the third son, you'll see that he only has minus 50 penalty because he's third in line. He also has minus 20 because he has a sinful trait. We see he's deceitful here. He does get a plus 50 because he has the learning education. So to increase the chances, you can raise your extra sons with the learning education. We can also use a hook, which will increase the rate of acceptance. If you fail to convert him, you can ask him again in 10 years. Another thing to ask for is if your religion has a holy order available, which you can check in the military tab's holy order section. If your son has a martial education, you can right click them and you can ask him to join the holy order. You can also use a hook as needed. We can also send our sons into war as knights and hope they get killed in battle. First, we want to check on the knights tab and look for our sons. If you want to play your player heir, make sure you forbid him from being a knight. And the sons we want to send to war are these 2 sons here. We have a 4th son who we can't force to be a knight because he's not 16, but we can add him later if we're still alive. Next, we find a weaker target and we declare war on them. You might have to fabricate a claim with your bishop. Once we're at war, we're going to click on our rally point and raise all our troops. Once your troops are raised, there is this plus sign down here, split off new army. We're going to scroll down and we'll see our sons are knights here. We're going to separate the 2 sons and form their own little duo. We're now going to send them off into battle like Faramir. Now there's a 28% chance he will be killed. We were lucky here with our first battle. If we check the battle, you'll see that the knights, our 1 son was slain in battle and the other son survived. He's at home technically, so if we click here, we can raise all again. And in this army, you'll see that it is our son here again. Again, we'll separate him, and now by himself, we're going to again send him after his brother. You can repeat this method with as many sons as needed. The only downside here is there's also a 55% chance for him to be captured, like he just got caught now. If this happens, we can't release him until we win the war. You'll see that we can't pay for ransom for him, even with the hook. I recommend going for white peace here. That way your claim is preserved. Once he's agreed to peace, we still have this claim and we can declare war on him again. End the war, our son will be released, and now we can try again. If we check the army here, we actually won't see him here. And so double check the knights and scroll down, you'll see he is not being forced to be a knight. Just force him again and then raise him again. You'll see that he's raised here, and now we can send him in again. See that he survived. Raise him again, send him in again, and there we go. The other son has perished as well. And that's how you get rid of sons Faramir style. When you make a knight army, don't add any troops, as you need the battle to end instantly, so it's best to just have them alone. The next few methods involve playing with our marriage as needed to try and only have one heir. The first thing we can do is, as soon as we get an heir, we can immediately murder our spouse. Once we have gotten rid of her, a downside of this would be we don't have any alliances. And we also don't have the spouse counselor to give us extra stats. One thing you can do now is you can go for marriage and sort for fertility to infertile. And this way, anyone who you marry will not be fertile. And we can see I can marry this older woman here, and I'll have an alliance with the Duchy of Northumbria. You can also marry for specific skills, like if I needed more martial, I could sort by martial, and then in the council, I could change my spouse's job to be helping me with martial. Instead of murdering our spouse, we can also imprison her, although there might be a small chance. If you don't succeed, you'll just give some tyranny. The good thing about trying to imprison a wife who has no land is that even though we fail, she is still in our court, and we can just try again. The chance will keep going down because she's gonna like us less and less, and if you're lucky, you eventually might get it. You can either execute her at the cost of some tyranny, or you can simply move her to the dungeons. Moving her to the dungeons will make her fertility 0. But if you forget to do this and leave her in house arrest, then she can still have children with you. Another technique is we can divorce our wife. Depending on your religion, your divorce will either be disallowed, must be approved by your head of faith or house head, or it's always allowed. In Catholicism, we must request a divorce from the Pope, and it is going to be based on a few factors. First, the Pope's opinion of us, the Pope's opinion of our wife, and if our wife has any virtuous or sinful traits. Every virtue will give a -10, and every sin will give a +10. We see my wife is gluttonous, so he will be more likely to accept my divorce from her. To get his opinion up, we can send him a gift, and in our case, this will be enough to allow a divorce to occur. If you didn't have or don't want to send the gold, you can also sway him, although it takes some time and it's very unlikely. If you really need to divorce her and you need a lot of opinion, you can also right-click him and grant him titles. If you have any extra titles to grant, for each title you give him, he will gain a massive 40 opinion of you. You'll see if I grant him this title, he's going to love me a lot for a long time, and this can drastically improve your acceptance chance. Once we get a little bit of piety, now we're able to divorce her, and we're left with only one heir. Another downside of these marriage techniques is that we won't have a lot of children, and children can help you secure alliances, but also grow the size of your family. Your family is often the most ideal candidates for vassalage, so use these techniques with thought. Also, this is one marriage thing not to do. As a male ruler, do not ever marry matrilineally. A matrilineal marriage means that the children from this marriage will not be of your dynasty, but of the wife's dynasty. And some new players erroneously think that children of not your dynasty will not inherit, but in fact, any children will have valid claims to your titles as long as they are not a bastard. The other challenge with having only a single heir is that you need to keep him alive. So don't try to do anything risky with him. And also when he's of age, make sure you forbid him from being a knight. We can see that even though we have a second son who is not part of our family, but instead part of the mother's family, he still has legitimate claims to our titles. And so if something were to happen to our son and he dies, then our heir will be our son that is not part of our dynasty. So an accident happened to our son, and you can see that my next son is going to be my heir, and the game is telling you that my game will be over when I die. This segues into my last marriage technique that can work. If we have a child with a lover, then they may be born as a bastard, which is this trait. You'll see that they will not inherit titles. You have to double check your religion to see what kind of bastard doctrine they have. This method will only work for religions with the legitimization doctrine, so this will work for Catholicism. The way this method works is we're never going to marry a fertile woman. We're only going to marry women that are infertile for either their alliance power or for a specific stat. Instead, we're going to look at our courtiers in this tab, further sorted in this tab. We're going to check for any female who is unmarried, and we can see this guest here. Then we're going to seduce her to make her our lover. and potentially get some children. If your chance is kind of low, you can send her a gift to get an opinion boost for a quick way to increase your chance. Once she has become our lover, we just wait for a few months for a pregnancy event. In the meantime, we can seduce other women in order to increase our chance of children. The other advantage of this technique is if you find a nice female like this one here, you'll see that she has a lot of claims, and the children we have with her can inherit some of these claims as long as they are pressed. So ones with the plus sign versus the unpressed or minus sign ones do not get inherited. So let's also seduce her while waiting for the other lover to produce children. We're going to send her some gold so she likes us and our seduce chance is highest. You can also use the character finder by pressing the C button. We can look for people inside of our range. People who are not rulers, who are adults, who are female, who are also heterosexual, who are unmarried, and we can sort them by age. You can even filter for people that are not lowborn, so there's a chance they will have some claims. If you scroll down, we'll see that this lady also has some claims, so we can try to seduce her. If she is not in our court, you want to make sure we recruit her to our court, otherwise she might get married or move out of range. If one of your lovers ever gets a spouse, just make sure you quickly murder that spouse. Otherwise, the children might be born with disputed heritage trait instead of the bastard trait. Once the spouse of your lover is dead, make sure you invite your spouse so that she stays within your safe harem. Eventually, you'll get an event where your lover will let you know that she's pregnant with your child. The first choice will keep this a secret. The second choice will let the world learn of your child's true heritage. You want to pick this choice so that you can claim this child. And when your child is born, you will get this event. You can choose to legitimize her immediately, or you can wait to legitimize her later. If you clicked on the option to keep it a secret, that's okay. You'll get another event to reveal their heritage at their birth. Let's say you also forgot to reveal heritage at birth. No worries. We can go to our lover and right-click her to expose a secret and just select the child's heritage secret. Now the world will know that he is my son, and you'll see he is now a bastard of my dynasty. He will now appear on my page. Because he's still a bastard, he will not inherit any titles. However, at any point in time, I can right-click him and I can legitimize him as long as I am the head of the house. In this case, I'm also head of the dynasty. Once I legitimize him, you'll see that he is now my new heir, and he instead just has a legitimized bastard trait instead. And this is how you can use seduction and affairs to create a batch of bastard children, and then legitimize the ones you want to be your heir. A last resort method is to right-click and imprison your heirs. Once you imprison them, you can then immediately execute them to remove them from succession. I don't recommend doing this unless as a last resort, because you will gain a lot of penalties. Instead, we can right-click and move your child to the dungeon. This will lower his health drastically. You'll see his health is now poor, and there's a good chance he will die in a few years. Certain cultures also have a special tradition that can give you a second option. Cultures with court eunuch, Amharic Highlanders, or Byzantine traditions, you also get the option to castrate your prisoners. So if I imprison this secondary son, and now I can right-click him, in the prison tab, I have the option to castrate him, making him a eunuch. This means he will not inherit any titles. The upside of this is that I will not get any negative penalties, except from him. He will dislike me. In the future, he could murder me if he dislikes me enough. But if we do this, then you'll see he's immediately removed from succession. Whichever method of imprisonment you choose, be careful if your imprison chance is low, since if you fail, your children will run away and then you can't interact with them at all, and they will still have their inheritance. So only do these imprison methods as a last resort, or if the chance is really high to imprison. So that summarizes most of my methods for Confederate partition splitting. Let me know in the comments if you need any clarification or tips, and if you're liking my content so far, would you please hit the like button, and if you want to stay tuned for more content like this, hit that subscribe button. Thank you. The next multi-heir succession law is partition. In partition, all children inherit equally. However, no new titles are created, and instead they only split up what you actually own. This law is unlocked with the hereditary rule innovation in the early medieval era. In this example here, I'm the King of Ireland with these titles here. I also own enough land to create the Kingdom of Scotland, and you'll see with Confederate partition, my second son will have the Kingdom of Scotland title created for him. However, if I change into partition succession, then you'll see that he will no longer gain the Kingdom of Scotland title, and instead the sons will only split what we currently own. Because of partition, our realm will not split as long as we only have one high-ranking title, such as one kingdom title or one empire title. The only issue here is the splitting of the counties. So you're still going to want to employ any of the previous strategies to try to concentrate your land into one heir. If we add election succession law to the 2 duchy titles here, then our primary son can safely inherit not only the kingdom level title, but a bunch of county titles, and only one son will inherit the extra title of Dublin. In this way, you keep the realm intact, and you also maintain your power by holding as much land as you can. High partition is the last multi-heir succession law. It's similar to partition, but instead of being split equally, the primary heir inherits half of each rank of titles, rounded up if odd. It's unlocked in the high medieval era with the heraldry innovation. With just regular partition, our primary son will inherit the kingdom title, a duchy and 2 counties. His brothers will inherit a duchy and its de jure counties and some of the other county pieces. If you change it to high partition, he will inherit at least 5 counties, versus our younger brother will only inherit 2 counties, which are the de jure pieces of Leinster. So if you don't have election law, or you can't add election law, then high partition is definitely an upgrade. And just like regular partition, no new titles are created. However, if you are using election law, then high partition is kind of unnecessary. And instead of spending the time getting heraldry, you can research something more useful like hoardings or windmills. 4 cultures start with Visigothic codes, which enables high partition as soon as the game starts. Basque, Aragonese, and Catalan are available in the Iberian region. Visigothic is a dead culture, meaning no pre-made character has it. You'll have to create a custom character to play it. The first single-heir succession law is House Seniority, which is also unlocked with the heraldry innovation in the high medieval era. In House Seniority, the oldest member of your house under the gender preference will inherit all of the titles. So we'll see that my new heir is my oldest dynasty member, then it's my half brother, and then it's my son who is born after him. And you'll see that even though I have a female dynasty member who is much older, because it's male preference, even a newborn baby son will have precedence over her. If I go even further and change it to male only, then it will remove all the females from the succession line. Another advantage of House Seniority is that even if one makes the mistake of marrying matrilineally and getting children that are not part of your dynasty, you'll see that this son is not eligible for inheritance because he's not part of our house. This can help prevent game overs like we discussed before. For the Czech and Slovian cultures, they can actually unlock House Seniority with the Table of Princes innovation, which is available to them in the tribal era. So in the early game, the king or duke of Bohemia usually starts out with House Seniority, and this can help them maintain their power. The next 2 single-heir succession laws, Primogeniture and Ultimogeniture, are the strongest and best succession laws. These are only available in the late medieval era after the year 1200 and unlocked with the Primogeniture innovation. In Primogeniture, your oldest child inherits all your titles, versus in Ultimogeniture, your youngest child inherits all of the titles. You can also combine the Absolute Crown Authority law to designate your heir. Absolute Crown Authority is unlocked in the early medieval era with the Royal Prerogative innovation. With this, I can designate an heir for my eligible children, and my youngest son has a good trait here, and I can select him to become my heir. If any of these sons have children and they die before they can inherit, I could designate their eligible children, aka my grandchildren, as heirs as well. To give a line of succession example, here we have primogeniture and equal gender law. My empress will be succeeded by her eldest daughter, then my granddaughter, then my grandson, and then my son, and so on. We can also see that in the dynasty tree here. Here's my daughter, who's my primary heir, and the next in line is my granddaughter, then my grandson, and if all 3 die, it'll jump over to my son, and then so on and so forth. If somehow all of my children die, then it will actually jump over to my sibling, and if needed, even to my parents if they're alive, and their siblings. Without complicating things, just know that as long as you have a big family, you should never run out of heirs. You just need to double check your first few successors to make sure no one is the wrong dynasty. So that was all the conventional successions and succession strategy. Most of the strategies are relevant during the Confederate Partition era, but can be used across any succession. Now we're going to talk about clan succession. In November 2023, Patch 1.11 changed the early game's multi-heir succession of clan governments. Instead of having Confederate partition, partition, and high partition, there are now 5 levels of succession based on your house unity, which can be found by clicking on your dynasty page. Your house unity goes from antagonistic, competitive, impassive, friendly, to harmonious. To briefly summarize how house unity is affected, any house member, including yourself, can affect house unity by doing certain actions. The extol virtuousness and accuse decadence actions are available if you're clan head. So if I right click my uncle as the clan head, I can accuse him of decadence, which will reduce house unity, or I can extol his virtuousness to increase clan unity. He will gain the trait extolled by the house. There's also a decision you can take as the house head called steer house unity. With this, you can spend some piety to steer the house unity towards harmonious or towards antagonistic for the next 10 years. Each level of unity will have its corresponding succession mechanic and some additional special attributes. Like in antagonistic unity, you will have reduced casus belli costs, meaning wars are cheaper. Claimant factions are more likely to spawn, so realm stability is dangerous. You can have unlimited kingdom level casus belli, meaning rapid realm expansion. And at the bottom of the house page at each level, there will be unique decisions you can take to provide different bonuses. This is an inheritance video, so I won't go deeper, and instead let's talk about the successions. Almost all houses start with impassive unity, and therefore impassive succession. Impassive succession is similar to partition, which splits existing titles among your heirs. The difference is that instead of being equal, at least 25% of your titles are given to your primary heir. So this makes clan realms start off a little stronger, as their realms will not split as much. As a reminder, you'll only split titles you already hold. So if I hold 2 duchy titles right now, the realm will split because my oldest son will inherit 1 duchy title and his younger brother will inherit the other. If I click on this title, I can actually use some prestige to destroy the title, and the realm will not split anymore because he's now only inheriting a county title, and my oldest son is going to be the only duke, outranking all his brothers. Antagonistic and competitive succession both are regular partition, meaning existing titles are split equally among your heirs. The downside of these laws is that vassals belonging to your house also gain a claim to your primary title, so you may always be at risk of being dethroned. The main upside is that antagonistic has unlimited kingdom invasion casus belli, and competitive has one every 10 years. This is in contrast to the regular once per lifetime limit that is also the limit for impassive succession. So thanks to this perk of having increased kingdom invasions, you can rapidly expand your realm if you have the strength. Friendly succession is basically high partition, where your primary heir inherits 50% of the titles. A downside starting here is you lose access to the once per lifetime kingdom casus belli. Harmonious succession is even stronger high partition, where your primary heir will inherit 75% of the titles, but you also do not have a kingdom invasion casus belli. One big downside with clan succession in general is they do not have access to clan elective law. They can only rely on cultural elective laws, or if the law already exists on the title, or you have to convert your government to feudal, which can be a little complicated. In my experience, clan unity usually drifts towards harmonious in the early game, but if you land a lot of family members and every vassal becomes a dynasty member, then they will begin to war with each other and pull the unity towards antagonistic. So part of clan strategy is to go for high crown authority to prevent dynasty member vassals from fighting each other and lowering unity. You can get high crown authority with the royal prerogative innovation in the early medieval era. You will also want to do some of the inheritance strategies we outlined in the beginning of this video. Some of the marriage techniques might be harder to pull off as clan government because your count rank and above vassals expect an alliance, otherwise they will get minus 30 opinion if they are powerful, or minus 15 opinion in general. Increasing clan unity is honestly pretty tough. Some actions are one-time things, or hard to do, or don't make sense. The most reliable ways to increase are to constantly extol someone, use the steer house unity decision, have high crown authority to prevent divisive action, and pay all ransoms and gift extra artifacts. Otherwise it's mostly RNG. Versus the fastest way to divide the clan is to imprison someone and then keep moving them back back from house arrest to the dungeon, and you can do this as many times as you want. So in a few seconds, I've already changed the unity down to competitive. So we can see why clan succession can be tough to master, since until we get to house seniority, we're going to be dealing with some form of partition or high partition for a long time, and even longer if you're only willing to play Primogeniture or Ultimogeniture. If you have any questions, just comment down below and I'll try my best to answer them. This last section is a bonus section on some non-conventional methods that you can use for any type of government. These methods are not the most efficient and they might have some negative drawbacks, but they could be of use sometimes. Thank you for making it this far in the video. My first non-conventional way for selective succession is if you're head of the culture, meaning you own the most counties in that culture, then you can reform your culture and go into the ritual tab and select bound by faith. This will make it so that only characters of the same faith can inherit. It's going to take some time for it to establish. So once you have a few heirs, you're going to pick your most favorite heir. So between this son and the second son has an inheritable trait, so I want him to be my next heir. I can personally educate this son, versus for the second son, I actually want someone of a different faith, so you want to select not insularism. So we'll have my Catholic wife educate this son, and we'll make sure that he will convert faith. You need to make sure that you start their education young, so that it says will become Catholic. If you start it too late, like after they're in their teens, it'll tell you that it's unlikely for them to become Catholic due to their age. If you don't have enough people that are not your religion, just use the character finder to try to invite someone that you can. Once bound by faith is embraced, you'll see that one of my sons disappeared, and that's because this son is now Catholic and my preferred son is still insular, so he's still eligible for inheritance. And once some time passed and my son was tutored more, the last son converted and now he's out of succession as well. The reason why this is also conventional is if we and our son die at the same time, then someone else in our family will inherit, but if we had no other family members, then our game would be over. The upside is at any point in time, you can try to demand the conversion of your children back into your religion, and most of the time they will accept because of your high opinion, and you also have a hook which can help you out greatly. Once he's converted back, you can see he's back in succession. My second non-conventional way requires you to have the Tours and Tournaments DLC. The idea here is we want to bring all our unwanted sons with us on a dangerous sailing journey. By sailing a lot, there's an event that will kill everyone on board, so we want to bring all the sons we don't want with us, and then try to find Atlantis. First, they need to be at least 16 so they can be a knight. So we're going to come here to check on all our sons. For our player heir, we're going to forbid them. For the sons we don't want, we're going to force them all to serve as knights. Then we want to go on a pilgrimage. It doesn't matter where you go, even if I'm close by. The main thing we want to do is we don't want any safety options. We want to have the most high danger as possible. I want to customize my route, and I want to go to the farthest sea that I can. So we can try going all the way here to this sea here. You'll see the travel route deviation is too large, so we can't go that far. Instead, let me see if I can do somewhere closer. So I'm going to go to this sea tile down here. Now we're just going to try to go back and forth on this sea tile as much as we can in order to trigger that event. I'm going to add another stop right before land, and then I'm going to add another stop going back down here. And we're just going to repeat that a few times until the game won't let us. It will eventually tell us that the deviation is too large, so we'll hit X on that. Once we're ready for that, you'll see we have about 26 chances of high danger. We're going to then go to the pump, which is this right button here. We're going to click on level 4 to have everyone interested. Just double check your entourage to look for your sons. If we scroll down here, you'll see we have 1, 2, 3, and 4 sons. So all the 4 sons we want to be here are here. The only downside with this method is some of our daughters might be joining and we might not want them to be here. Once you're ready, we can start the pilgrimage. If you started the pilgrimage and forgot to change the route to go to the sea, don't worry. You can click on view travel, and at the bottom left here, you can still customize your route and add destinations as needed. When doing the events, you want to avoid options that slow you down, since you might not succeed on your first journey and you might have to do this many times. You also sometimes will get this event where someone is getting sick or in danger, and if it happens to be your son, you can definitely turn a blind eye. When you get choices like this, you don't want to get sick or die early, so just make sure you survive. Once we're on the water, it's just a matter of luck and time to see if we get that event. And after a few months, we were lucky. We got the event where everyone died. And so if we check our son, you'll see that all his brothers died on the ship with us. And that is how we can consolidate our inheritance into one son in a non-conventional way. And those are my unconventional ways to consolidate your inheritance. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and if you learned something, please consider liking the video and subscribing for more. Comment down below if you have any questions. I will gladly answer them. Thanks again from BreadGod, and hope you have a good day.